What do you consider to be good songwriting?
Well, it's funny. I mean, one of the reasons I was interested in talking to you about this is because I don't really consider myself a songwriter. I mean, not that I don't ever write songs, but that I feel like the way I've come into making music was coming out of improvising largely. Like when I first, the time when I really connected, like when I first started playing guitar, when I really connected with it was, I would just lie in my bed at night, turn the light off, and just, that's how I learned how to play guitar. Mm-hmm. And so that's always been a part of, like, at the time it wasn't like tied to any tradition or something that I knew of. It was just like, that's just what I like to do. And and then later, of course, you discovered like, oh, the improvised music is a thing. There are people who spend their whole lives focusing on improvisation. And at that same time, I was writing music, but it was sort of through that lens, or kind of, it was usually a vehicle, for people to, like, trying to come up with ways of writing interesting material that could be also kind of played around within. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things when I first joined Deerhoof that I was interested in, or even before, was this kind of fluid relationship in the band between, material and freeness, Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that I really was drawn to, and it's still something we think about and talk about.
I've read that Greg considers your Deerhoof songs to be, and not yours specifically, but just Deerhoof,
yeah,
to be fragments in a sense.
Right. They get connected, reconnected, and we're constantly discovering ways that they're connected. Or, I mean, sometimes it's conscious. I mean, the same melodies will appear in multiple songs, or fragments of melodies, things like that. But yeah.
When you guys are putting these songs together, then is verse, chorus, bridge out the window? Like, how are horns thought of?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, if those sort of, that kind of terminology can be applied to it later, we often don't really necessarily know. Or, like, it's really common that, like, people will bring in material, and the thing that they think is like the chorus, somebody else is like, oh no, that's the verse. And then ditch what you thought was the chorus, and I've got a better idea. This kind of thing. I can't count how many times that has happened. So yeah, and I think, I mean, one of the processes that we have, especially when working on records, is, just cultivating an awareness, which I guess is an awareness of time, and sort of your relationship to this thing that's sort of washing over you, right? And, like, maybe halfway through the seventh time, it's like, yeah, that's enough. That's enough time for that thing to happen. Like, you don't need to hear that anymore. Or maybe, so it's just an intuitive process. And we're not like one hive mind. We all have different, opinions, and this is stuff that we'll work out. And oftentimes it evolves and changes when we are playing shows. Like, if we're, like, reworking older material, like, the forms will often change. Like, for some reason, like, this, like, weird bridge, it's like, it doesn't really, the song doesn't need it, let's skip it, that kind of thing.
Well, knowing that you guys, live in different cities, for this record, for example, was there any sort of coming together to play the songs live to feel them out, or was it all just done?
Well, we did get together once, mm-hmm. And we played. So the only song on the album that was actually played semi-live was the song Zazit, okay. And it's like this. It was the demo that Satomi had made was this really fast, really insane electronic music. And there have been a few of things like this where it's like, we'll you know, have to figure out something that seems totally impossible. And so we'll like use plugins to slow it down and just learn the notes that way, and then slowly get it faster and faster.
So for the Magic too, I read that you threw away like 50 to 60 bits, you know, in thinking of it, you know, and you added on, like, you know, I guess it depends on what you consider a song of those bits, right? Yeah. So what do you consider a song, you know, knowing that you say you started improvising,
right?
You know, fragmentation.
I think when people introduce material, they often think of things as songs. Like I'll sometimes it might just be a riff, or usually people will introduce something with a few parts, and sometimes we're writing things for everybody, and sometimes it's just like, oh, I have this guitar part. Mm-hmm. But yeah, usually like if we're demoing things, they're pretty well developed. But that being said, almost never do they stay in that form.
Sure.
They always, like, once everybody hears it, people just start to get ideas, and somebody will be like, oh, I have this, you know, guitar thing I wrote, that'd be a great intro. And, you know, this kind of thing, just like slowly hearing all the possibilities for where it could go. And that really also evolves, like, so I think also, like, on Future Teenage Cave Artist, what is a song on the album is actually created from 6-7 fragments of songs, what we thought of as songs, but, you know, have been broken apart and certain parts removed, and then this kind of thing. And there was also, like, in that case, you're also, because you're dealing with the recording and it's not about performance, and the sort of, the goal was to move as quickly as possible. So we would have, like, somebody might send an MP3 of this idea, and somebody else would be like, cool, grab the MP3, put it in, and that's what's on the, you know, that's what's on the record.
In the deliberation of, like, deciding how a song should go, how tough is that? Or, like, what's your process as a band for figuring those things out?
Well, it depends. It's like when we're together, it's, you know, it's just us hashing it out in a room. If we're separate, it's just whoever is, like, whoever has the gumption at that moment to be doing something. And then anybody can obviously voice their opinion on it. But we haven't come up with a way for us to actually, like, you know, because, like, if we were writing on Zoom, I mean, that would be, I guess it's possible. Yeah. But it doesn't seem possible to me. You know, just like so much of the nuance, it just seems like it would be really difficult. But anyway, so, like, yeah, so if, you know, if I'm, like, working on something, I might try something, send it to everybody, and people will give their feedback on it. And it's just trying things, throwing stuff at a wall, and seeing what sticks with the bandmates.
Spirit Ditties of No Tone, I read, was a hard one to set on, right?
Yeah, boy, it's so long ago. But I think ultimately it was a matter of, I think basically the part that was really tricky. I mean, I think the structure was somewhat tricky, but I think the main thing was Greg was never happy with his playing of the beat, I think, as I remember. And so finally, like, he eventually, like, constructed something that he felt good, you know. There were a lot of versions of that I actually liked. Other versions, but, like, you know, that was the one where finally everybody was like, that's it.
In terms of, like, you know, is there any rules to Deerhoof? Like, is there, like, don't bring a fully fledged song, or, you know,
No, I mean, I will say that we have experimented in the short term for specific projects. I mean, little like rules that we could would hopefully spur creativity, and also not discourage creativity in other people. So that's part of it, right? It's like with a collaboration like this, you're not just operating in a vacuum, you're also dealing with other people's strengths and weaknesses and whatever, issues. And so we've done things where it'll be like, let's just experiment with everybody writing any ideas on keyboard. And I have no background. I mean, I took piano when I was 4, but for 3 years, but I don't remember. I remember one song. But so it for me, it's like it's just, it brings out different things. And so we've done things like that. We have done things where we direct, to be like, okay, you write for everybody for this one project, or for like this, like I'm thinking of The Shining. We recently did a 7-inch of songs from The Shining, and Ed just completely took over and did it basically. And then at the end was kind of like, okay, I need drums here and this kind of thing. But it was really spearheaded by him, and so that kind of thing happens all the time. But I mean, for us, the ideal is, I mean, we've been talking about this even before COVID. It was like, our ideal is to be in a room together, hashing it all out. But we live in 4 different states, and thousands of miles away from each other, and it's not really possible. And lucky for us, we've already been operating in this way for a while. So we're comfortable, just like, okay, I have a song, can you record the bass? Or like, just, somebody has a bass line and it's like they can send it and somebody else can add drums. And so our process is, it's not strange for us. It's not, we're just pretty used to it at this point.
What does a day where you write look like?
Well, it also, it depends what you consider writing. I mean, it's like,
Sure.
I spend almost all my days right here all day.
Yeah.
So a typical day for me is, I mean, it's, in this case too, it's like the lines between writing and producing and arranging and everything, it gets completely, you know what I mean?
Creating.
Yeah, it's just like all this stuff is happening at the same time. So it's like you might have a melody idea, and so I guess you would call that writing. And so, but then I'm also at the same time like obsessing over the tone of the guitar. So I'm going into the software stuff, and like at that moment I'm just doing everything DI with the computer.
I've read some musicians, they have a regimen for when they wake up.
Right.
I pick up the guitar and I'll play, and then there are some that are just like, when it comes, it comes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to chase it or force it. So which do you ascribe to?
I almost never play guitar. Basically, I mean, it was interesting, like when we were first locked down, I was like, oh, I'm gonna play guitar for a while, and I like started playing, and it was great, and I remembered some older pieces that I had learned to play, and that, yeah, it's funny for me. It really is like it's like a social thing, like in terms of actually, other than it's like for writing or recording, like, I mean, I love playing my instrument, but outside of like playing with other people, it's just like it just isn't that interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's just, you know what I mean? It's like, and I am jealous because I admire people who are like practice like crazy and play all the time, and like and you see it, and and I see it in myself too, like when we're playing a lot, like, and I'll prepare for tours, and then I'll feel pretty good, and then we'll start the tour, and then once I'm going, it's like I definitely, like, there's a strength there that I love it.
Mhm.
But then I don't know, maybe the contrast is good, or maybe it's another. I also tell myself that maybe it's just good for my body. I've had tendonitis issues and stuff in the past, so it's like this is my excuse. Like I have to get this. But the truth is, it's just it doesn't appeal to me a lot of the time. Like I am constantly like thinking about projects, musical and otherwise, and creating things, but the sort of technical side, I just yeah, I don't push that too much, for better or for worse.
Going down that rabbit hole, do you think songs live in this like ether and then you're able to pluck them, or is it just all within, like you create and that's why it exists?
I mean, I think probably that any number of zillions of possibilities are possible, but for me, writing is kind of like it's a constant. I mean, it's a constant process of tricking yourself into being amazed, into being uh, aware and like hyper aware of, you know, I don't know how you feel, but I remember when there was this sense when I was younger that, I mean, and this is not something that was thrown around necessarily in like classical music or whatever, or in jazz music, but like in popular music, there's this sense that you're good for a couple years, and then you're probably going to run out of ideas, and you're not going to be cool anymore anyway. And so yeah, you've got until you're like 30 or something. And um and I always thought, I mean, and part of the reason I thought it was bullshit was because the vast majority, I mean, I had a lot of musical heroes that are obviously much older, and but still there was this idea of like, when you're younger, that like you somehow have to, like, you're gonna lose it, you
Mhm.
know, and you're gonna lose your inspiration, and I just never bought it, and I still don't buy it. I think it's just like a weird uh, social construct, or this thing that we convince. I mean, maybe it's just um, it's a capitalist thing. It's like people are useful when they're young and pretty or whatever. But
Sure.
but I just we don't, it's never a question of like not the band not having enough ideas. It's always a question of the band having just like how do we somehow synthesize like this swath of because we all are just listening to different things at different times. And it's true that one or more of us at a given time like might be in a slump, and or everybody's just going through stuff in their lives. And one of the nice things about being in a band is you can rely on other people when you're struggling or whatever.
Mhm.
And also, you know the other thing with being in a band is we learn uh, sort of how each other, I mean, we still are very different people, but we um, understand something intimately about each other's musicality. And so like I can be like, if I hear a drum beat, or if I have this idea for something, I'm like, oh yeah, Greg's gonna nail that. Like I'll know
Yeah.
that. I don't have to, like, it's not like this question of, I wonder if that will work. It's like at this point, I do feel like, oh yeah, okay, that's something I don't have to worry about. So yeah.
Do you think there's more to be found through collaborating, or?
I just think, I think, I think it is a huge part of what I am interested in personally.
Mhm.
And I just think the more imaginations stuff can go through, the better,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, um, and that doesn't mean that therefore, somebody's solo music is not good or whatever. It's just feeling of building something as a community, right? And like, I mean, it makes me think of like Star Trek or something. It's very much the situation where it's set up so that all these people, like one person is can do something kind of amazing, but it's impossible without everyone, right?
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, I believe in that, and I think that there's something important about that. And I don't necessarily enjoy. I mean, I enjoy making music by myself, but um, for me, it comes to life. It comes to life when I'm with other people, I guess.
How, when you going back to again deliberating, like how do you guys communicate when you butt heads, or say you're really stuck on like, no, part C has to be this segment from over here, and then Greg's
Right.
like, no, I want this part C. You know, how does
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. I mean, you just argue. I mean, and I mean, when I first joined Deerhoof, I mean, we most of our time was spent uh, arguing, talking. Um, Not only arguing, but just like, I mean, we would have, I mean, just like we would get together and talk for 10 hours. And was like really, and we wouldn't even get into music, maybe, it would just simply be like us kind of working through whatever issues. And that, I think that's a real strength of the band. And I think there's a lot less of that now, but I think that's partially because there's a lot more understanding now of who we are, and also like what we can and can't change about each other. There's no point in like, you know, hashing over some, argument we've been having for 20 years. Again, it's just like, okay, we'll let that lie.
So agreeing to disagree, or
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, but yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, there really is no other way uh, than just working it out. And if you have a strong point of view, you have to argue your point of view, and ultimately the band kind of decides. But I mean, the way the band works though also is that if there's one person in the band who is unhappy about something, then the band stops everything and works it out until we have a solution. So I think that's also good, because if you're really struggling with something, you can, put your foot down and say, no, until we work this out, like, we're not going forward with this, whatever it is.
can you think of a song on this most recent album where you guys, it was maybe either difficult to decide on things or how it should go?
Um, Boy, it's a good question. Well, I mean, in a way, I would say Zazit, but just simply because that was the one where we were actually together for.
Mhm.
So I mean, and it wasn't that it was particularly hard, but it was that was one where we were all in the same room hashing everything out together.
Mhm.
So it's just a lot. It's so different working on stuff over, email, and you know, those, it makes it both easier and harder. Things can kind of actually, I mean, and this isn't so much about uh, arguing or something, but just this Damaged Eyes was one where, the ending part of Ed's, I think there were various other possible places that could have gone, and there, all of a sudden that was one where, after, hashing out all kinds of things, was like it finally made sense. And that actually happened while we were together as well.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
You guys ever like specifically, and this could be you or anyone in the band or collectively as a band, do you ever specifically, not take reference or influence from a certain tune? Like
Oh yeah, sure. Um, Actually, the first thing that comes to mind, on Dira versus Evil, there's a song. What's it called?
I think I know what you're talking about. Is it the song Paquita?
Yes. Oh, okay. So you know about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that one was like that was an obvious one because I was so obsessed with that song. That song is so good. And
Mm.
like I was like, I just really want like it was more of an experiment than anything. Like I want to understand why that feels like that feels. You know what I mean?
What about the most recent record? Are there songs that you can point to that were influenced by others?
Um, well, actually, damaged eyes. I was that was me attempting to the beginning stuff. I was trying to learn uh, what's his name, Blake Mills. Do you know that guy?
Mm-mm.
Oh yeah, he's really amazing and an incredible guitar player. I mean, go online and just go on YouTube and look him up. Um, and I had been looking at his videos, and there's this one song called Gold Coast Sinkin', and it's a really interesting song and really beautifully put together. But I was just trying to figure it out, and then I was like, what would I do if I was writing, you know? And so like that, there's this sort of like basically it was sort of written around uh, this chord from his song, basically like turning it from in his case it's like this really ethereal kind of weightless feeling, and ours is more like this pummeling as if ACDC was covering it or something. Um, but yeah, that's an example. Um, I don't do that often though. Like where I write something like specifically sort of thinking about. I'm usually like a lot of my process has been like there's times where I will write a bunch of material, think it's awesome, come back to it and hate all of it. And then what then becomes the writing for me is kind of actually unwriting the material, which is, I mean, hard to describe, but like what I will do is like, so maybe I'll, in my, like, I'll maybe have written like two guitar parts, a bass line and a melody. And I'll come back to it, remove the melody, um, remove the bass and one of the guitars, and then basically remove the rhythm and basically try to I have these like things that I'll do to try to just like remove everything that's objectionable to me and then rewrite from the ground up and then slowly reintroduce the things that I've taken away. And I mean, I think in my case, it's like, it's a product of a flawed mind in the sense that like, I, um, I think my harm, like, I don't, you know, I'm not, like a trained musician and I don't have, so I think a lot of times, um, I end up creating, kind of gnarly chords that sound kind of, it just sounds natural to me. It sounds right. And so a lot of, uh, I just have come up with tools for writing things that create that feeling that I like, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah.
Speaking to theory, and then also the interesting note on how, like, oh, what makes that song feel the way it does, like, do you look at chords, like, do you understand that, like, intervals and take that, or is it rhythmic mostly, like, what grabs you?
Right. I guess maybe it's just like sounds that surprise me, you know?
Mhm.
I've been listening a lot lately to Les Paul and Mary Ford
Yeah.
Best Of record.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, that's one of those where it's just like, I mean, in theory, understand what's going on, both from a technical, like from the recording standpoint. And it's like, I mean, obviously it's like there's crazy stuff going on in the like double speed guitars and all this stuff, but like, but just the amalgamation of stuff, you know, it's magic music, right? I mean, it's just like, and the everything comes together in such an amazing way. And um, like I'm a big Shabazz Palaces fan, and like one of the things I love about Shabazz Palaces is this feeling of this cultivation of space. Like there's a lot of space in that music, and um, yeah, I mean, it just blows my mind. And I there's I tend to like that kind of thing.
How do you avoid, or do you care about repeating yourself? You know, do you ever find yourself doing the same moves, same movements?
Sure. Yeah, I do. Collaboration is a nice way to get away
True.
from your from your stuff that you can't otherwise get away from. I mean, or it helps. I mean, I think you just have to be aware. Um, I know I have certain go-to things. I was thinking about it in this thing I'm working on right now with these German musicians, and I put on some slide guitar things. It's kind of like that's like, and actually not so much in Deerhoof, but in other contexts. Like this has become a thing of mine, and like it's like, is that okay? I mean, I guess it's fine. Like in this, I guess it's kind of, you have to decide on a case by case basis. I mean, on some level, I guess it's nice to have your thing. Working with other people is nice because either it sheds a different light on you being the same person that you always are, or it encourages you to have to become something that you're not, or to imagine something beyond your own narrow view.
What other hallmarks of your playing would you say rear their heads often? So slide guitar.
Um, but it's, oh man, I just remastered. So Ed and I have we're in a band in Minneapolis called Colossamite, and that our, I guess that was in the late '90s. I think the record first thing we did was like came out in '96 or '97.
Mm.
But they're reissuing some stuff, and so I've been going through it and remastering it, and like it's funny to go back and try to like make sense of these mixes, because it's like the group was 3 guitars, no bass, and I'm doing this thing that just sounds like just like shattering thing in one speaker with like almost no note definition at all, and like it's interesting. I mean, I think, I mean, actually we have a Deerhoof in joke, which is that like whenever I'm trying to describe the sound to someone, that it all to the band, I'm like, yeah, like, I heard this thing, and the joke is that it's always like like some like, it's like breaking glass sound, which I guess I'm drawn to. I mean, you know, I think the sound probably that I actually wanted to make was something like, like a Steve Albini, like,
Mm.
um, and that's the sound that I thought I was making, and I was wrong.
Sea Moves is a song that you completely did yourself, right? That you brought to the.
Oh, oh yeah. Um, yeah, that's actually with so the drummer for Colossamite, actually. We had another band called Gorge Trio, which is Ed and that drummer and me as well. And that was originally recorded for a Gorge Trio recording that we never did anything with any of the stuff we recorded. And that was one that I liked and had just continuously futzed with. I mean, that was recorded. Yeah, that was recorded like 12 years ago. And we finally, did something with it. But so yeah, yes.
And are there songs on this album that you did the same with? It was just all.
I Sympathy for the Baby Blue is also like that.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think Greg added drums to that, didn't he? Yeah.
Speaking of that song, it has, I mean, this is could just be my filter, but it reminds me a lot of like Underwater Orchestra type guitar playing.
Oh wow.
Like
You know,
Muse.
I love that band. I have never heard their records, but
Mhm.
I have. I was mixing something for this band called the Evil Usses. They're from England, and they were giving me reference points, and they sent me these songs, and I was just like, "This is incredible." And then I went and looked up some YouTube live footage, and the live footage was incredible too. That is a band I really want to see sometime, and I need to listen to their records. But yeah, yeah. What makes you say that? I'm curious.
Just the guitar tone itself,
Uh-huh.
the shifts of chords is
Uh-huh.
very reminiscent to me.
Huh.
Um, so I don't know, maybe it was in the back of your head at some
Yeah,
point.
maybe. Um, I actually don't know the name of it, but they had sent me one song, like kind of it was like, you know, something that they were thinking about.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, anyway, that's cool. That's
Are
neat.
there modern musicians that are really inspiring you right now?
There's probably things. Let me look at my iTunes. This is embarrassing. Oh man, I got a good one. Um, there's this band from Arizona called Slow Moses. Have you heard them?
Oh yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
man.
totally.
So I played. Um, I did some shows doing improvising with this guy Tashi Dorji, and we played in Phoenix. And well, we played a couple shows. No, we played one show. And then the day after that, I played a duet with this guy, Michael Krasner, and the band that was headlining was Slow Moses. And
Mm,
I was just like, who is this band? And then they gave me a CD, and then I brought it home, and this record is just incredible.
yeah.
Um, and so I've listened to that a lot. That one was on major rotation for a long time. I like this Jack Name record.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
That's really cool. I don't know that was totally. I mean, I don't know anything about that person.
One thing that really interests me, and I know we spoke about this earlier, is you're right. There is this idea that as you get older in music, you lose it.
Right,
On the contrary, with movie directors, they're supposed to get better as they get older. You know,
right,
Scorsese.
right, right.
I spoke with Daniel Rawson of Grizzly Bear last couple weeks ago, and he felt the opposite. You know that.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think it probably just. I mean, there's probably no absolute truth to any of it. It's just kind of, you know, in whatever particular language that you're working in, uh, whether the possibility for new ideas keeps presenting itself. I guess, I mean, it's interesting, like with a movie director, I guess the assumption is that you're kind of, you're dealing directly with sort of human emotion and interaction and
Mhm.
this kind of thing. I mean, stuff that we're dealing with in music as well, but it's just maybe the idea of older directors getting better is just because they understand the human condition a little more. It's like wisdom. But I would say the same. I mean, did you see? Are you a fan of what's his name? Milford Graves. You know this drummer Milford Graves.
Mhm.
Um, really incredible drummer. But I highly recommend. There's a documentary um, called Full Mantis
Mhm.
um, that was made about him, and so basically it's sort of him talking about his past, and there's a lot of archival footage and things, um, and at the end of it, there's him playing. Maybe they probably show like 7 minutes of the solo concert, and it is some of the most incredible music I've ever heard in my life, and it's also music that requires wisdom, I think.
Hmm.
And so that was a good you know, I have, I mean, I'm a fan of Milford Graves' music, but I remember people playing me some of his earlier recordings, and feeling like he's somebody who would play and sing, and it was just like this really full body like thing, and I never fully kind of got it. And I mean, maybe it's also just like you just have to see it as part of it, but like um, this was really like this sense of, you know, this is a master. And the thing is, I mean, you know, but I believe that all of us can do that. You know, I think, I mean, not do exactly that, but do our own version of that. You know, that we all have that capacity to just plug through it until we get to and at some point we will become this heightened version of ourselves, you know. I don't know. I hope so.
I mean, I think you guys are a perfect example of that. And I know you were saying like traditional music, it's hard to make it feel like it's from a long time ago or like it has some sort of longevity. But
Right.
even the last song on this record, is it Call to Thee? Like it's
Yeah.
just a little piano piece, but it sounds, I mean, I'm sure if you played that in a Starbucks, you would be like, oh, who's this composer? You know, like,
That actually is a Bach piece.
okay, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't know that either though. When Greg sent that recording, I was like, whoa, this is incredible. I didn't write that.
Let's finish with what do you want to say about songwriting? Whether what it means to you, how
Yeah,
how you view it, what you want people to know about it.
right. So you have to, in order to do anything, um, you have to set certain parameters for yourself. Like if everything that we do isn't constantly, like we aren't going through life just with no context. We exist within context, and it's the same with art. We create within context. But one thing I've been thinking about lately is just that I think it's really easy to limit the scope of your imagination. If I have any advice, it's that to fight that. You know, just I think it's too easy to do that. And I think what if we have any job as creative people, it's to you know, remain sensitive, you know. And I just know for myself, like, you know, maybe this is something that Daniel was bringing up, is this, as you get older, I do think there's a tendency towards conservatism, right? We tend to narrow our experience. We tend to narrow the swath of people that we come into contact with and all that. And I think it's our job to not do that, you know, as much as humanly possible, and hopefully we'll keep making vital work, you know,
Yeah.
or something.
Well, beautifully said. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was really nice talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise.
Bye.